Students, welcome again to an exciting educational video. This is Dr. Luisito Masanga at your service. Shout out and thank you very much to those students from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao who are faithfully and consistently watching my educational video. To these students, a warm round of applause to all of you. Mabuhay! Today we are going to discuss about contracts and agreement, and this is part of business law obligations and contracts. Our learning outcomes for today, at the end of the educational video, students will be able to comprehend business contracts, understand essential elements of a contract, learn terms and structure of an agreement, understand standard forms of contracts, learn precautionary measures before signing a contract. Let us understand about these business contracts. In business contracts, definitely you have suppliers, and this is the owner or the entrepreneur, and you have your customers. And of course, if you are the entrepreneur, you are producing goods. And goods can be two types. It's either you have a product or a service. So one thing that you remember in business contracts is that it involves a product or a service, and definitely there is a goods. Okay? So that is clear. Now, let's take another one. If this is the supplier, you might have, this is the manufacturer, and your product goes to the wholesaler, and then the product goes to the retailer, and then to the customer. So again, it involves a product. No? This one. Okay. So let's clear this one. So we are talking here of business contracts. So there might be a procurement of goods and services, maybe as a borrower of money or in rental agreements, okay, or maybe franchise agreements, be a supplier of goods and services, a retailer, a wholesaler, and maybe an independent contractor. Having a partnering agreement, let's say, for example, your business is single proprietorship, or it could be partnership, or it could be a corporation. So somewhere along the line, you will have a agreement or a business contract. Okay? Or maybe a joint venture or a consortium. Okay? So a contract is usually a part of the business. It involves contractual commitment or obligation. Example is between supplier and manufacturer, or between manufacturer and the wholesaler, or between a wholesaler and a retailer. So that is the contractual commitment or obligation. Or you might have a partnership, you will have a business agreement or a partnership agreement. Always remember that majority of contracts entered will have goods and services, or GST, implications. We have two types of contracts, verbal or a written contract. Written contracts may exist of a standard form agreement, or a letter confirming the agreement. It's black and white, in other words. Or it could be a verbal agreement. Rely on the good faith of all parties involved and can be difficult to prove if there is a breach. All right. So it is advisable, where possible, to make sure your business arrangement are always in writing or in a form of written contracts to avoid problems when trying to prove a contract existed. It is very difficult, no, to and very riskier to have or just manage a verbal agreement. It must be put in writing, especially if there is already a lump sum of money that is involved, no, or a huge capital that is involved. So everything has to be in writing. So regardless of whether the contract is verbal or written, it must confirm four essential elements to be legally binding. And this is an offer, an acceptance, an intention to create a legal relationship, a consideration. An offer between, let's say, for example, you are offering a vehicle to a certain buyer, okay? And acceptance is that the buyer is acceptable to the color, to the brand, to the model, and there is an intention to create a legal relationship. The buyer and the seller are legally involved in a certain contract agreement or a written agreement. And there is a consideration of the amount, the total amount or the contract price of the vehicle. However, it may still be considered invalid. No? Number one is it entices someone to commit a crime or is illegal. No? Selling shabu, you have a written contract between the source and the seller. No, that is not appropriate and is entered into by someone that lacks capacity, such as a minor or a business that is already in the stage of bankruptcy. No, that is considered invalid contract and was agreed through misleading or deceptive conduct, duress, unconscionable conduct, or undue influence. So these are factors or attributes that may invalid a contract. Again, the four essential elements of a contract: an offer, an acceptance between two parties. There is a product or a good or a service that is being offered by the seller to the buyer. A consideration, lump sum money. There is no specific format when it comes to general terms. General terms and structure of an agreement. Generally, it will include some terms, either expressed or implied, that will form the basis of the agreement. These terms may outline contract conditions or contract warranties. Contract conditions are fundamental to the agreement. If the contract conditions are not met, it is possible to terminate the contract and seek compensation or damages. Contract warranties are less important terms and not fundamental to the agreement. You cannot terminate a contract if the warranties are not fulfilled. However, you may be able to seek compensation for any losses incurred. When negotiating the contract terms, make sure the conditions of the contract are clearly defined and agreed by all parties. Contracts may follow a structure that can include but are not limited to the following items, like details of parties to the contract, including subcontracting arrangement, including address, age, name of spouse, birth date. So those are the details. Duration or period of the contract from start to end of the contract. Definition of key terms used with the contract. Example are, default, failure to pay or mortgage. So the terminologies that are alien to both parties should be specified, especially to the buyer. a description of the goods, no, the features and specification that your business will receive or provide, including key deliverables. No? It is very important that you detail the features and specification of the product or the service. The payment details and dates, no? If this is check payment, installment payment, the date, no? The year, no? The month, including the interest that will be applied to late payments, no? The penalties, the key dates and milestone, required insurance and indemnity provisions if the product or service requires an insurance, no? Like for example, a comprehensive car insurance, no? Guarantee provisions including director's guarantee, damages or penalty provisions. This should be speculated and specified. Renegotiation or renewal options, no? Especially in rentals, that this contract is valid for 1 year and the renewal should be 2 months before the end of the 12th month. Complaints and dispute resolution process, termination conditions, and special conditions. So again, contracts may follow a structure that can include some of the things that we mentioned, but are not limited. No? Okay. There is already a standard form contracts or the ready-made contracts. Examples of standard form contracts can be an employment contract, a lease agreement, an insurance agreement, or financial agreement. However, a standard form contract is a pre-prepared contract where most of the terms are set in advance with little or no negotiation between the parties. So these contracts are usually printed with only a few blank spaces for adding names, signatures, date, etc. Standard form contracts are generally written to benefit the interest of the person offering the contract. It is possible to negotiate the terms of a standard form contract. However, in some cases, your only option may be to take it or leave it. You should read the entire contract, including the fine print, before signing. So, some of the unfair terms. If you intend to offer standard form contracts, you must not include terms that are considered unfair and unethical. This could include terms that allow one party but not another to avoid or limit their obligation, one-sided only. Allow one party but not the other to terminate the contract. So it should be symbiotic and acceptable to both parties. Penalize one party but not the other for breaching or terminating the contract. And allow one party but not the other to vary the terms of the contract. So it is very important that these standard form contracts be allowed to be negotiated so that there is no unfair terms and conditions. So once you've signed a contract, you may not be able to get out of it without compensating the other party for their genuine loss and expenses. Compensation to the other party could include additional court costs if the other party takes their claim against you to court. Some contracts may allow you to terminate early with or without having to pay compensation to the other party. You should seek legal advice if you want to include an opting out clause. So before signing a contract, read every word, including fine print. Ensure that it reflects the terms and conditions that were negotiated, very, very important. Or you may seek legal advice, no, to your lawyer. Maybe you could advise the seller to borrow the paperwork and have your lawyer check the terms and conditions inside the contract. Allow plenty of time to consider and understand the contract. So it should not be abrupt. No? Don't be pressured into signing anything you are unsure. Never leave blank spaces on a signed contract. Cross them out if you have nothing to add so they cannot be changed or altered later. Maybe write it not applicable. Make sure that you and the other party initial any changes to the contract. Any erasure should be countersigned. Obtain a copy of the signed contract of your record, especially if it is already, uh, notarized. No? For this topic, contracts and agreement, this is our reference that we use. Thank you very much for this reference. And of course, thank you for those students who are continuously subscribing and watching my tutorial video. Till next time, everybody, keep safe.